Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Paulina, and just grateful to you and the Family Navigator Program for inviting me to today's booster session. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. So I'm going to be presenting on the Planning for Adulthood. As Paulina mentioned, I am the program manager of the Daniel Jordan Fiddle Foundation Transition and Adult Programs at CARD. I will start with a brief overview of CARD and then go into the presentation. So CARD is the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. It is an organization that's funded by the Florida legislature through the State Department of Education. We are a statewide program. As you see on the visual, there are 7 CARD centers throughout the entire state. The CARD center that I work for is a partnership between the University of Miami and Nova Southeastern University. Our specific center was established in 1993, and we are a technical assistance project within the state. All 7 CARD centers share the same mission that we seek to provide that support and assistance with the goal of optimizing the potential of people with autism, dual sensory impairments, and related disabilities. We have 2 main purposes. So we wanted to create that statewide system so that individuals with an autism diagnosis and their families and support system had a place to turn to get information, resources, and referrals, but also to improve the capacity of existing systems as well. So we work very closely with schools, with companies, other organizations and entities within our catchment area, but CARD all across the state as well. And I mentioned for our catchment area, for our specific CARD, we cover the area of Broward County, Miami-Dade, and Monroe. Within our catchment area, our main office is located in Coral Gables, which is the campus for the University of Miami. We also have a satellite office in Davie, and then branch offices in Miami Lakes and in Miramar. And Miramar is where I am located. However, we travel between all offices. And just to share who's eligible for CARD services, so we primarily support individuals with autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. However, it could be any of the previous diagnosis, for example, pervasive developmental disorder or PDD, or non-specific PDD-NOS, also Asperger's syndrome, and in addition to what is on the slide. We also can provide support for individuals who receive a developmentally delayed diagnosis, which is now available for individuals up until the age of 9. There are also genetic disorders that have autism characteristics like Angelman syndrome or Fragile X, and then individuals with dual sensory impairments and sensory impairments with other disabling conditions. So we are supporting the individual with this diagnosis, but also their family support system and any professionals working with them. And then just a quick overview of what is the service. So we do provide the family with that individual support. We meet with the family, they have a specific contact person at the organization, and we are there to help them obtain information, resources, and referrals, whether that be navigating understanding that diagnosis, navigating school, therapies, recreation, the transitions from elementary to middle to high school, and then also the transition after as well. We also provide a lot of professional, educational, and consultative services within companies and organizations in the community. That's a lot of technical assistance and consultation. We provide a lot of outreach and public awareness. And then I oversee our adult and transition services. So the presentation that I'm about to jump into is one that we do often to really lay out the different paths within the transition to adulthood and how we plan for adulthood. So before I go into the presentation, we did create what's called a Padlet, and this is essentially a website that is accessible to all. So if you'd like to scan it, you may do so now. If you have a smart device, you may scan the code on the screen. This Padlet is called our Family Resources and Planning for Adulthood Padlet, and is really helpful for anyone with a developmental disability, for the individual and their family, and helping planning for adulthood. So we're going from information about CARD to transition and deferment, then going into age of majority, guardianship, then all the different agencies, APD, the Social Security Administration, vocational rehabilitation, and we'll touch upon more as this Padlet is very comprehensive, but this is a wonderful tool that is absolutely free that we share with the individuals, their parents, and the community. And we have a lot of professionals in the community that may use this as a resource to become informed, but also help guide families step by step. So I'll give another moment if you'd like to scan that as well. So for today's presentation, we will be going through the different paths after an individual exits the school system. So that's whether if they graduate and exit the system, or they defer their diploma, participate in a transition program, and then exit. We'll touch upon decision-making options. So what does that look like when an individual turns 18? Some funding programs, touch upon housing, transportation, and safety as well. So let's jump into the various paths. Before we go into the paths, something that I really have seen both personally, but also professionally, is really understanding the difference between entitlement versus eligibility. As Paulina mentioned, I am the older sibling of an autistic adult, so I have personal experience guiding my brother through this stage in his life. And I see a lot of families really not understanding the difference when you're in the school system and you're entitled to specific services, and how that changes once you exit and now you have to be eligible. So really understanding that entitlement means you have the right to service and is as listed by law. I'm sure you all are familiar with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IEDA, and then also FAPE, which is the Free and Appropriate Education Act, and then also understanding that individuals with developmental disabilities may qualify for a individualized education plan, so an IEP. So within all of those laws and acts, there is an entitlement to services. However, that does change once a student graduates or exits the school system. So it's really understanding that shift, that it's not a guaranteed service. You do have to be deemed eligible, and having a documented diagnosis does not always mean that you are eligible for that service. And we'll go a little more into that. So with the eligibility, we do explain that for services and support, each agency will have its own eligibility. The eligibility for the Medicaid waiver is very different from obtaining SSI or supplemental security income. So it is up to that individual, their parent or guardian, to be able to obtain those services, but knowing that you might not be found eligible or qualified based on their requirements. Sometimes there may also be a wait list, right? So services might not be guaranteed in the moment, but there may be a wait list for those services. I would say a big point here is in the self-advocacy, but also in having the documentation required in order to apply for these services. So when we meet with families who have a loved one within the school system, we highly encourage them to either keep, and hopefully both, a physical binder, a digital binder or file of their loved ones, all their documentation, whether that be IEPs, therapy reports, evaluation reports, because all of that is going to be necessary when applying for these services. We are seeing a lot of individuals exiting out of the school system, then applying for these services later on, and then saying, oh, I don't have copies of an IEP, I don't have copies of the diagnosis, going back to the school, going back to that professional. And if it's been a series of years, sometimes 7 or more, they may not have that file anymore. They are legally able to purge those documents now. So this is definitely a focus if you're guiding families, is as you're going through that process, make sure you have copies, whether definitely physical copies, but digital as well. So that way that they have the option to have all this documentation to show the eligibility for an individual for these services. We also talk about matching the individual to their setting, so depending on their loved one's skills and challenges, also taking into account their motivation and interest, really involving the individual in their future planning. We're talking about choosing attainable goals, making plans, sometimes also research or visiting different programs and options to see how, what is the day-to-day, instead of just reading about it on the website or making a call. Definitely encouraging them to visit different programs. And sometimes maybe those programs don't offer additional services. Sometimes you may have to supplement outside of that setting. So for example, some of our college students may need a tutor or an executive functioning coach. Some of our adults who go to adult day programs may also benefit from continuing speech, occupational, physical, or ABA therapy, but also considering working with a psychologist or psychiatrist, making sure that they have the support to be successful in that setting. And also taking things into consideration, knowing that autism is a developmental disability that is lifelong. Each individual is going to have unique challenges as they transition through life. It is okay. It is okay knowing that there's not a time frame. A lot of times when I meet with families, they're assuming that because they're at a certain age, they should have a certain set of skills. They should have participated in a certain life milestone at that time. But it is about having that flexible thinking and that willingness to change. If plan A doesn't work, B can also happen, or plan C or D. You know, there's many letters in the alphabet, but having that flexibility and acknowledging that maturation may be slower than typical peers. So it's all about that flexibility. We don't want to set them up for failure. It's having that flexibility. So when we talk about paths, what are the potential paths after exiting the school system? So this is where we're going to delve into at the beginning of this presentation. So for some students with developmental disabilities, they may be able to exit or graduate and participate in post-secondary education, and there's many different options within that area. They may also either go straight into employment or maybe start volunteering and have employment as that goal. For some of our adults, it may be the best setting for them to be part of an adult day program so that they can continue that routine and have those opportunities to socialize and still learn outside of the home. And then for some of our individuals, this path may be in conjunction with the other three, but depending on funding, for some individuals, recreation and leisure programs may be their option at the beginning before obtaining funding resources. So we're going to jump into the post-secondary education. So we do want to share about the comprehensive transition programs that are available from the Center for Unique Abilities. These are more college experience programs, and there are many here in the South Florida area. And most of these programs are offered by colleges and universities, and they're really focusing on inclusive or really that college experience. So it's not a program where you're obtaining a degree, but maybe obtaining a certificate or learning or acquiring some new skills. A lot of these programs do, I would say, advertise for individuals with intellectual disabilities, but also accept individuals with developmental disabilities like autism, looking for someone who's 18 years or older and has fully exited the system. And it's really an opportunity to continue learning, maybe even having the opportunity to shadow or learn more about career and technical programs, maybe some independent living instruction as well. Some of the programs even have where you can stay on campus, on a dorm. So it's really providing that experience. And also through the Center for Unique Abilities, an individual may apply for a scholarship in order to pay for these programs. This program may also be covered by vocational rehabilitation, depending on the goal that that individual has on their IPE, which is their individual plan for employment through that specific agency. So this may be an option for some of the individuals that you are assisting. There's also the trades, so the career and technical education, or the CTEs. And in the South Florida area, there's more than 46 accredited programs. And this is where they have the opportunity to go to class and work towards a certification in a career or technical field. Sometimes these programs tend to be more flexible as they're industry specific. So we do see the advantage of not having to do general education courses. They're really going in there to focus on what they would be doing on the job. These tend to be shorter programs where we've seen a range from 15 to 16 months compared to a bachelor's degree of 2 years and an associate's degree of 2 years or a bachelor's degree of 4. We see a lot more hands-on experience. They also may be more cost-effective, and we looked at time, tend to be more of reduced class size compared to those college-size classes. And we are seeing a higher demand for these jobs as well, where we have a lot of students that may be struggling if they've gone to college and obtained a bachelor's degree. They're having a tougher time finding employment compared to our adults with technical degrees. So this definitely can be an option as well. And through these programs, they will also have either an accessibility office where they can also disclose their diagnosis and request accommodations. We also may have students that can attend a college or university. So within the state of Florida, there are 28 state colleges. So these also offer those career-related certificates or 2-year associate degrees, but may be looking into those bachelor programs as well. There are 12 public universities in Florida. Some have specific autism programs as well, so they're offering additional supports. It's just understanding when an individual is interested in this option for post-secondary education, knowing that Florida public universities are definitely competitive and do not alter admission requirements. Most of the time, the required test score for ACT or SAT is not modified for individuals with developmental disabilities. They need to come in with a specific score, GPA, and still having to do an essay or personal statement, letters of recommendation. What we have seen some schools be flexible in is service hours. They may be able to waive that, and we've seen some schools do that, but that is to be inquired at the specific school. So understanding and making it very clear to the individual and family that if this is part of their goal, understanding what are the requirements in order to be essentially eligible to be a student there. And, what is it going to take to fit in within the requirements so that they can attend that college or university. So I mentioned how it is so important to research the school. So we have a lot of families, reach out, look at websites, but we definitely encourage a tour if possible, especially for these colleges and universities that have autism-specific programs, and making sure that they inquire, is this a degree-seeking program? So it's going to result in a degree at the end, or a non-degree seeking program where it's more about a college experience compared to receiving a degree. A lot of common services within colleges and universities are accessibility services or offices. In the past, or some colleges may still have it referred to as a disability service office, making sure that if that individual benefits from accommodations and supports, that they touch base with that office within the college and university, that they disclose their diagnosis, they submit the required documentation, and then they can ask for accommodations. There are other services as well that are actually included in tuition that the student is paying for, but that may not know that's accessible to them. So tutoring centers within the colleges, writing and math centers, career services, making sure that they're aware of those services and using them if that's part of their goal. With the potential services, this is the college and universities that may have autism-specific programs. For here in South Florida, NSU does have Access Plus, which is an additional fee on top of tuition, but does provide a lot of support within academic tutoring, peer mentoring. They may also provide some coaching like life skills, social skills, kind of helping that individual adjust to that transition to a university, pairing them with a student. Some also may offer some career planning or on-campus living support as well. So it's definitely important, if the individual you are assisting and providing support for, if they're needing additional support, seeing if the college they're interested in or university has a separate program, and then seeing if that is an option for them and their family. Now we're going into employment. So for some students, they may exit the school system and go and have I would say, the goal of going into employment. Now we know finding a job is a multiple step process. And for individuals who are autistic, it can be hard finding and then maintaining that job. So really looking at additional supports and services can be beneficial for helping that job seeker with their goal. So there are employment agencies and services that can help guide and provide direction to the individual, and then also the employers as well. What we have seen is it is the journey of employment. So understanding, what education and training they have, creating a resume, how do you search for jobs effectively and efficiently, how do you apply to that job, learning about disclosure as well, your rights under the ADA, so the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then what can you do to help maintain that job once you have acquired it. So of course, those are a lot of steps within that journey. So we definitely recommend working with vocational rehabilitation. So it is a federal state agency with the goal of assisting individuals with disabilities to prepare for, get, keep, and regain employment. It is a journey, as I have a picture of their employment guide. There's many steps in the process, and really understanding the expectations of what they do and do not do, and explaining the timeline, I would say, of the assistance is very important. If I go in thinking an agency can help me within 2 weeks, but in reality, it's really a 4 to 6 month process, that's really going to change my reaction when things happen or they don't happen. So it's really important to make sure that if you're sharing information about this agency, really deferring to their specific handbook of services and encouraging that family to review it, ask questions, and making sure they're checking in at each appointment, phone call, to see what is going to happen next. In order to help our families with this process, we actually took the handbook and broke it down into a checklist, a visual checklist, and really highlighted the different points within the step, but then also use the same visuals as the handbook to show the timeline as well. So within this process, in step 3, they're allotted 60 days. In step 5, they're allotted 90 days. So really understanding that this is a multiple month process. And for a lot of our individuals, they're only using vocational rehabilitation once they exit or graduate the school system. However, vocational rehabilitation has some wonderful support, which is their pre-ETS, which is really their employment support once the student is in high school, and providing the information about resumes and career guidance, talking about self-advocacy, self-determination, and really helping them come up with that goal once they exit the school system as well. CARD actually offers a separate training in diving into how to really prepare a family through the vocational rehabilitation process, but I wanted to make sure it was included here as it is a wonderful agency, but it is really making sure that the individual understands the expectations, what is their role, what are their rights when they're going through this agency. We also created an appointment tracker. We have seen a lot of our adults when going through this process because of the deficits in executive functioning, it can be hard to keep track. So making something visual like an appointment tracker can highlight, which office they're working with, who's the name of their counselor, making sure they have the correct contact information. And then every time they either meet or have a phone call with the counselor, they are making note of that, the date and time, which step they're in the process, what was the reason for that visit, and then anticipating what is the next step. We really see that this helps set up these individuals for success. And since they are writing it, making sure that they have something to refer to after the appointment as well. So that's brief about employment. For some of our individuals, they may not know what what industry they would like to work in, or maybe they're not ready for that step. So volunteering can be a great opportunity. For volunteering, just as in its essence, it is a chance to give back to the community. They may be able to, learn something new, learning new skills. It is an opportunity to meet new people or even practice some social skills as well. They may even try working with different fields. As you can see here, they may be working out in a garden. You can help in a food pantry, maybe even working with kids, with animals. So it can also help determine what that person is interested in, or making sure that if they try something, they know that is not what I want to do. And that helps with creating that goal for employment. It's also an opportunity to gain experience, which can be added to their resume, and practicing the responsibility of having to wake up at a certain time, get ready, show up on time, and follow through on task. It's also a way to start making connections and creating a network as well. And sometimes volunteering may lead to an opportunity for employment. So there are now a lot of, I would say, volunteer aggregators. For example, here in Broward, there's Hands on Broward, where you can create a profile. You can check what you're interested in, and if there's a volunteer opportunity for that, it's actually sent to you. So you can make a list, whether if it's a food pantry, animal shelter, maybe you're looking to work with nonprofits or schools, and it helps you, where we talk a lot about working smarter, not harder. Instead of you looking one-on-one, they're sending you opportunities. So there's a lot of different websites that can help for those opportunities. Another path could be the adult day program, sometimes also referred to as adult day training programs as well. And these may be for those students once they exit or defer, participate in a transition program, and then exit, where we want to continue that routine, that Monday through Friday routine, where they're mostly out of the home 5 to 6 hours a day. And the focus does change to be a little more activity-based. Some of these programs do still have some basic academics that they may review, but it is that chance to be out of the home and provide those opportunities for socialization, recreation. Some programs have pre-vocational skills that they may teach. They may also go out in the community as well, and really focusing on creating that structure and routine. A lot of the times what tends to happen is that once the student graduates, they tend to graduate, what some people say, to the couch, or they're just at home. We want to make sure that we're providing them with an opportunity that they can continue that routine, as we know when someone with a developmental disability, and I would say specifically to autism, once that routine is broken after so many years in the school system, sometimes then we're seeing those reactions, those meltdowns or behaviors. So it's important to plan this ahead, make phone calls, do tours, really making sure the family is anticipating that lapse in the routine before they exit or before they graduate so that they are prepared. Programs do differ in price and which payment methods are accepted. We do see a lot of programs that accept the Medicaid waiver, and we'll talk briefly about that. This is also where eligibility comes into play. Seeing the, I would say, capacity of the individual, sometimes addressing behaviors, toilet training, the specific needs as well, where some programs maybe even have skilled nursing services offered where others will not. So really looking into the eligibility, also their schedule. Most are Monday through Friday, either starting 8 to 2, 9 to 3, and then understanding that individual's needs. There may be a different ratio of instructors to participants. Some may be for every 10 participants, there's only one instructor. And I've seen programs from 1 to 10, 1 to 5, 1 to 3, but very rarely are we seeing that 1-to-1 within the community. And just examples of some of the programs, activities could be arts and crafts. We've seen music, dance, cooking as a life skill, working with the computers, hands-on experience outside in the garden, physical fitness classes. So there can be a range. So really looking to help that family, guide them in finding the interest of that individual. And if they're interested in any pre-vocational skills, some of these programs offer that support as well. And for some other individuals, we're really looking at recreation and leisure programs to make sure that there is not a gap after they're exiting the system. So really creating a schedule for them with these activity-based programs. So really taking their lead in their interest and hobbies, and again, really focusing on continuing the opportunity for socialization, community involvement, can even create a visual schedule or a calendar so it's very predictable and have that structure. And these programs range throughout the county. For some nominal free programs, the Department of Parks and Recreation can be a great place to start. Also various community organizations as well. This is where I share a lot about Special Olympics. That could be a wonderful program for the individual where, depending on the season, they're having the weekly practices and then they have their competitions. It's also great for health and wellness, has that social piece to it as well, and having the opportunity to be on a team, to be part of a community. It's also a free program as well. So looking at the options of free programs or those with fees, and really just seeing based on that individual's interest. So whether it's a sports team, swimming, art, dance, bowling leagues, just having that opportunity to have at least every week an activity to look forward to. And now a lot of these activities are offered either on a hybrid, in person and virtually, or all in person or all virtually. And there could be a combination within this schedule. Within this slide, so we do also recommend whether they choose one of the other paths like post-secondary education, an adult day program, employment and volunteering, also to think about this piece as well. So many times do I tell my adults, if we get to work hard, we also get to play hard, meaning that we should be able to be in the community, have fun, connect with others, because sometimes so much of one thing is not helpful. Doing work all the time is not helpful, but also doing too much play and relaxation is not good either. We want to find that balance. So now we're going to go into these decision-making options. So this, providing information in this area is really sharing about the law, especially here in the state of Florida, that the age of majority is the age of 18. meaning that once an individual, regardless of a disability or a diagnosis, once they turn 18, they're considered their own person. They can enter in a contract, they can sign, they can make their own decisions. So we know that individuals on the spectrum display great differences in decision-making capabilities. They may be able to make all decisions in one area, but in another area, they may need explanation, assistance. So it can vary. But again, to make it clear, regardless of the person's capacity, once they are 18, they are legally recognized as an adult. When I'm sharing this information, a lot of the time, a parent did not know that this is true to their loved one with a developmental disability. They think because their loved one has a developmental disability, they're able to continue to be their point of contact, the person that can sign for them. But in reality, we're really looking at the law. So if they want to continue to be that person because of their loved one's capacity, they do have to take legal action, whether working with an attorney or the court system, in order to make decisions on behalf of their adult child. And really looking at where do they need assistance? Can they make their own medical decisions, financial, education, and so forth. So we're just touching base on a couple of these. There's a lot of information in the Padlet that I definitely encourage. If this is an area that you're sharing a lot of information and supporting the community, it's one of the first resources. There's an actual packet that goes into a detailed explanation to all of these levels and showing what is the most intrusive to the least restrictive, and then going into a checklist where a family can sit with their loved one and check the box whether this is a decision they can make completely on their own, it's a decision that maybe they need some support, or they need full support in making decisions in this area. That can be really helpful for a family to make that realization that maybe my loved one does need support in this area, but maybe it can help in identifying which area specifically, because with some of these options, you're able to have rights within some areas compared to all. So just to quickly go over this, we always suggest a family to consult with an attorney to see what is best for their family and their situation. But there is plenary guardianship, which is considered full guardianship, meaning that person, you're going to court to name them incapacitated, meaning they're not able to make any of their own decisions. So this can be a costly and timely process for individuals, but we do see, especially within autism, for someone who is non-speaking, maybe needs help with the daily living skills, may be an option for them, where a parent is truly making all of their decisions on a day-to-day basis. Again, can be a costly and timely process where you must work with an attorney and every year have to submit paperwork in order to keep that plenary guardianship as well. But what we're seeing more is actually being a guardian advocate or obtaining guardian advocacy, where this is specific to individuals with developmental disabilities, where a loved one can make the petition to oversee rights within a specific area. If an individual really struggles with making medical decisions or financial, that paperwork can be submitted to the court, and then through their process, making sure that that individual is, of course, not being taken advantage of. That's the least restrictive option. If they find that individual does need support in that area, then they would grant that family member or individual to be their guardian advocate. We do see this much more common within our community. And what's great about this option is that rights can be restored over time compared to plenary guardianship, where it's very difficult to restore rights because you've just gone through this entire process of naming that person incapacitated. So to have more of that flexibility, a guardian advocacy can be provided. There's also, obtained. There's also things like a durable power of attorney that could be helpful. We have attorneys that really encourage families to talk about having a health surrogate, definitely even talking about things like trust. I would say the newest process has been supported decision making. So for those individuals that really can make these decisions but maybe need some guidance, can go through this process and really just identifying in a specific area. Let's say if I want to make financial decisions, I'm asking my mom, or if my mom is not around, I can ask Aunt, let's say Aunt Jackie, or I'm asking this friend, and sort of outlining the steps and how they would make their decision. So this always ranges. So I would say if you're sharing information about which really is the age of majority, is sharing that, there are many options. It's going to have to be individualized to the family, but really sharing that packet, which I'll highlight at the end, can help for the family to come to that decision on their own, and then they can also consult with an attorney for assistance as well. But it's very important to share this information, because what ends up happening is there's an emergency situation, and let's say a parent can't make the decision, can't comment, can't enter the room. This tends to happen in medical situations. So we want to make sure a family is prepared before an emergency. Now for funding programs. So we have mentioned that a couple of the programs definitely will need the financial support, and they may be, they may need that assistance. So that could be federal programs or local agencies. So it's really depending on that individual's path after exiting the school system. And it's, again, going back to making sure they understand that difference between entitlement and eligibility. You must be eligible for these programs, and eligibility for most of these programs actually differ within programs. So you may be able to obtain one of this funding support and not another. This is where documentation is key. The more documentation a family and an individual can submit, the better case that they can present for the needs for that individual. This is why it's very important, especially if you are guiding and working with individuals who are currently in the school system, so that they request those copies of IEPs, any therapists that they're working with, any supports that they're getting, that they're having an additional copy and putting that away, whether a binder, scanning it, having a digital file, because things happen. We work with families all the time that call us and say, I lost everything in a flood. Unfortunately, there's been a fire, and these things happen. So having backups to your documents is very important. This is something that when my brother was in high school, I initiated, and we have many binders and backups on digitals to make sure when it's time to apply for these programs, we have what we need to make our case. And first, starting with the Social Security Administration programs, and there are two, and they tend to get confused. So there is SSI, which is the Supplemental Security Income, and then SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance. So these are both programs provided by the SSA, and they can be provided to individuals with disabilities, where you're getting a combination of a monthly financial benefit and also insurance. But again, you must be eligible, and they have different definitions, I would say, for both programs. Also understanding for SSI, children may also be able to obtain this financial support and insurance, and that is solely based on the family's income. And a question we get all the time is, well, I have a student that has received SSI as a child. Now they've turned 18 and now they're getting denied. Why is that happening? So there are different eligibility criteria for the age ranges. When it's a child, it's based on the family's income. when it is an adult, they have a separate definition. Essentially is, does that individual have the capacity to work? And if they do, that may defer their ability to continue with that benefit. I've seen it time and time again, and I've gone through it personally, where you're making sure that once that individual turns 18, you get a letter. You may appeal to the process. We always advise families to appeal. Sometimes it gets to a point that you may need to work with a disability attorney in order to help with the process as well. But this can be helpful for a lot of individuals because it can provide their opportunity to have that financial benefit and insurance once they're in adulthood. You can work and receive SSI. There's certain programs and to ensure that you're not going over. The individual has to report their wages, but understanding that, you know, a lot of our individuals, especially those who have participated in post-secondary education, more specifically college or university, what we are seeing is that they are being denied because of their capacity to participate in those programs. They're assuming then the capacity to be able to find a job that's meaningful enough so that they can be supported. The difference then with Social Security disability insurance, you see this more often for individuals who are 65 and older, who have retired and have paid into the system. However, if there is a parent who has paid into the system, those 40 credits, and has retired, they actually can pass this benefit on to their adult. Or we actually have adults who pay into the system and also obtain this program as well. And this is where they're getting that monthly financial benefit, and they get Medicare while SSI gets Medicaid. But just understanding that these programs have different eligibilities, and the main focus is really the ability to work. And that's where, you know, someone maybe with a college degree compared to someone who does not may or may not get approved for a program like this. Within the Padlet, we have extensive information on the Social Security Administration programs. There are details specifically from the administration breaking down how to do the appeal, how to do the online application, but the key here is having those documents. And then I would say the other most common program is from the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. So that is the Medicaid waiver. It is a program that can provide a lot of support. We do have a very long wait list here in South Florida. I would say if you're working with families, once they are an individual with a developmental disability or even a developmental delay diagnosis at the age of 3, they can get on the list. And this is where we're really trying to get families to be proactive, as we never know exactly how that individual is going to grow up and what their needs are going to be, but always having this as an option. The key here is the eligibility. So the individual must have documentation of a developmental disability before the age of 18. And then in their words, constitutes a substantial handicap that can reasonably be expected to continue indefinitely. So a lifelong condition. Here I have listed the specific disabilities that can, that can apply. And please note that for autism, it does say severe forms of autism. And there is no clear definition of what severe forms of autism is. So this is where that documentation can be very helpful in making the case for the individual. But to be honest, a lot of our individuals who are applying for the waiver are getting denied because they're not falling within this severe forms of autism. Like for the Social Security Administration programs, we also advise individuals and their parents to appeal, and then they may also work with Disability Rights Florida to help with that appeal as well. But understanding the eligibility and making sure they have documentation before the age of 18. We have many adults who are diagnosed with autism in adulthood, so they automatically are ineligible for the waiver, unfortunately. Within the waiver, these are all the various services. Now, they're not all provided at once. And if you're on the wait list, you may be able to obtain respite services or even companion services like a personal like support companion or personal care assistant, a PCA, but it is going to depend on that person's needs. There also is a crisis process where we have information on the Padlet as well. Within this waiver, there is the iBudget plan and CDC Plus. Essentially, the difference is with the iBudget, you get granted the waiver and you should be working with a waiver support coordinator that then requests your funding for the specific services, whether that be an adult day program, group home, respite, ABA therapy, compared to the CDC Plus means whether it's the parents or a family member request for the funding, you're provided the funding, and it's up to you then to hire and manage the vendors yourself. So whether it's a good fit, and if it's not a good fit, you have to be the one to let them go as well. So it's a much more extensive role that parent has to do, but can be really helpful when you're looking for programs that are not vendors within APD. You're pretty much getting that sum of money, and then you're able to pay for a program or a professional. So it's a very brief overview. Something that is new is Hope Florida. So this is a program that was started by Casey DeSantis, and it is to help families navigate through the waiver and also any additional services that they may need. So this can be another tool, whether navigating the waiver or any other, there's other, I would say, departments within the state that also have Hope Navigators to really help with the follow through. I'm gonna wrap up in the next 5 minutes. When it comes to housing, for some of our adults or the individuals that we are supporting, this may be part of their goals, and just understanding that moving out of the family home can be one of the biggest decisions in a person's life. And sometimes that decision is not always on the person. Sometimes it's a situation that happens. And really going through this process can be complex. So before starting the housing search, here's just some questions that we recommend. Really understanding what the level of support is needed. So is this someone that needs support 24 hours a day? Is it just throughout the day, per week, throughout the day, maybe once a day per week, or someone who needs minimal support? Also looking at what are the different types of housing, whether if it's a single family home, like a group home, a planned community, differences between townhouses, apartments, maybe even an assisted living facility. And the most crucial piece is going to be the funding. A lot of our families do obtain the waiver and then use that waiver, the Medicaid waiver, to pay for a group home. They may also have that CDC Plus program within the waiver to be able to pay. Some may use Medicare programs, vouchers, things like Section 8. Some are private pay, but sometimes acquiring that funding takes time. So that's where I would say a lot of the focus is first figuring out the funding and what can be available. It's very unfortunate now that many of our constituents are now finding themselves homeless. So we are going through the county programs within this last year, especially after the pandemic. The counties have really utilized all of their funds and it's been depleted. So this is an area we're still trying to figure out what are some other options. There also are different shelters depending on who you're supporting and making sure that if that's an option for them. Some of these shelters like Camilla's House have an age range. So just understanding what is out there. And then just other areas to consider, if they need help with medication, behavioral and mental health support, maybe if they're staying in home, providing respite, for the caregivers, if there's employment support, social opportunities, money management. There's a lot of areas then to consider. We also have lots of links here talking about the Autism Housing Network. There's a toolkit that kind of breaks all of these questions down. And there's many studies that are happening right now, like A Place in the World. We're really trying to focus in creating these communities for individuals with developmental disabilities so that they have this type of support. So I'm going to go quickly through transportation because let's say we've chosen a path, we have funding, how do they get there? A lot of the times it is the caregiver providing support, but of course they may not always get to do that if they're working and they have their own obligations. So understanding what could be the options. Now, for some of our adults, they can drive on their own, but have to learn how to drive. So maybe the family teaches them driving or using a local driving school or program. So we do have a list of driving schools that can be shared. There's also a virtual reality program that's happening through Nicholas Children's Hospital down in Miami-Dade. That's really assisting these individuals in understanding the rules of the road before they actually start doing the driving classes with the driving schools. If a family member does drive, it's first setting about rules and expectations and a schedule. And that really is, part of adulthood, that if you need me to take you somewhere, you're not asking me 5 minutes before. We have it, we've discussed it. Maybe you put it on the schedule. If it's something you have to do every week, let's say like Special Olympics, we put it on the calendar. So setting those expectations, having a visual schedule can be really helpful. There are paratransit services within the counties. So for Miami-Dade County, it is STS. And just understanding that you apply, there's a nominal fee, and just knowing that you have to do, the application. Some counties have evaluations, like for Broward, and also just the learning how to schedule it and understanding that it's not perfect, but it can be helpful in alleviating a parent who's driving, but also promoting that independence as well. Also, for some individuals, it could be using rideshare services, things like Uber and Lyft. So the learning curve there is learning how to use that app, but also how to be safe, making sure that you're asking them who they're picking up. So it's not just a random car, making sure the picture matches the person, the car matches the person, the license plate, taking all this into consideration. Some individuals may use a taxi service or private transportation. Or public transportation. There's also some travel training that are available in some counties. But it's all about understanding the expectations, how to learn the system on how to request or track that transportation, and all about safety, which is my last section that we'll wrap up. So it's really helping these families and individuals, making sure that they're having this discussion. Because sometimes so much work goes into the funding and finding the opportunity that if the loved one is, going into the community on their own, are they safe? Do they know what to do? So especially for South Florida, the individual is over the age of 18. Do they have state identification? They should have an ID once they're the age of 18. So it's not just having an ID because you have a license or a permit. They should have a state ID. They should have a way to be able to identify themselves. Asking questions, does the individual know how to respond to their name? Do they wander or elope? Do they know how to ask for help? Are they able to recite or provide a phone number or address upon request? Let's say if they interact with a first responder, do they know how to disclose their diagnosis? So it's really asking themselves these questions. And then if they need to be taught, who can they work with? If they're working with an ABA therapist, a psychologist, if they're role playing at home, and keeping these top of mind. There's also a lot of technology. We'll talk very quickly about the wallet card, but having a script, role playing, especially disclosing a diagnosis. There are a lot of tracking devices. You may be familiar with Angel Sense, which has a plethora of different tracking options, from this keychain here to putting something on clothing to a phone. But if they also have other medical needs, do they have a bracelet? Do they have it on their device? If it's somebody that wanders or elopes, having those door alarms, knowing if your city or county has a special needs registry. So Miami-Dade does have one, and that information goes to all the first responders in the county. So if something happens and they encounter, they have a lot of background information on that individual, and even information that can help in the approach in that individual as well. Even within apps. If you have, and now I can put it as Find My Phone, which is available through iOS and Android. If they have a device on them, there's also an app that's called Life 360. It's something I use in conjunction with Find My Phone for my brother to ensure that his paratransit transportation picks him up at the right time and is taking him to the right place as well. And the wallet card, just briefly, is a project from the Disability Independence Group. It was actually a collaboration between the Coral Gables Police Department and CARD, and it is an actual card that it's a communication tool for teenagers and individuals with ASD or intellectual disability that they can pull out at the same time as pulling out a identification, like a state ID, a permit, or license, so that way the first responder that is assisting them also knows that they have a diagnosis and maybe need additional or further support. They do make one for the individual and also caregivers as well. And this could be great in having something, because if it's someone who maybe struggles to communicate, the card does it for them, and you can actually personalize it to the person, where you can say, they may be at risk for elopement. They may have unusual body movements when anxious. They may not communicate clearly. So there is a way, there is a way to add that on the card. Another piece is that you are allotted space to put 2 emergency contact persons. So personally, my brother has one. I'm listed there, and my father. So if anything were to happen to him and he's not able to communicate clearly in that moment, they're able to then call us because they have that information directly on the card. This is something we practice at least once a week, where I'm pretending to be an officer asking for his identification. He then says aloud, "I am reaching out for my wallet." And then he pulls out his state identification, but also this card. That way, when he hands it over, they review all the information and they know more about him so that they can adjust the support that they're going to provide him now that he's disclosed his diagnosis. I thank you for your patience, as I know I went a little over. Before we wrap up, if you can help me in completing an evaluation. If you have a smart device, you can scan it, the code here, and then there'll be a title of training. It would be Planning for Adulthood, 11:15 at 11 a.m. And then I can also put the link in the chat as well if you're interested in filling it out that way.
Thank you, Natalie. I really appreciate. I think this is a great source of information, and that is going to be very helpful for all our families, not only our families, but other partners in the community. I really appreciate it. And also, just to let you know and let everybody know that we're going to share the link of this presentation for all of the attendees that registered, and then they couldn't make it because of conflict. And we are going to we're going to complete the form and share it as well. We can share it as well in the email that we send after the presentation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I thank you so much. I just have one quick question before we start with Phoebe. When do we tell our families? When is a good recommendation to tell our families, like, this is a conversation to start, like transitioning to adulthood? When is a good, we have families from different ages. When is a good recommendation if they don't receive it from school? Like, let's say you should start thinking about transitioning to adulthood?
And I just want to double check the question is for me, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So I would say either upon entering high school or the age of 14 is a great place to start, because within high school is really determining, what is that next step? Do I see my loved one going into employment? Do I see them maybe going to post-secondary education? And then depending on that, I would say that track or that path, you can then use VR services for that, or have a focus, more on education, working with tutors, depending on which path can be helpful. But I would say for the parent to have that focus, so that when they are going through their IEP meetings, they're working with the ESC specialist, so they can prompt and ask these questions, because what we're seeing is that you might not be getting all the same information. The schools sometimes don't share all of the options, so this is where we really encourage parents to question everything, really make sure that they're informed. There are transition programs. A loved one can stay within the school system from the ages of 18 until 21, 22nd birthday, depending, where they can have additional programs to help them really learn life skills, social skills, employment readiness. We want to encourage them at the beginning, because we don't want to be a senior saying, oh, I didn't know about this, and then we have to, try to do what we can. So I would say the beginning of high school, it's really to feel empowered, that you can ask questions and see what's out there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we're going to complete the evaluation. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Now we're going to have Phoebe Fellow. She's one of the ABLE ambassadors, and she's also a LEND trainee. She's helping us at the Family Navigator Program. Very knowledgeable about the ABLE program, and she's going to share with us today. Phoebe, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Hi, Paulina. Hi, everybody. I think I know almost everybody on here. Natalie, I'm going to reach out to you. My son goes to SFAX. I know you guys do trainings there, but that was a really, I have to tell you, wonderful overview of every single topic. Usually the trainings are separated, and it's a little overwhelming because you need to be pounded over the head, I'm sure you know, with your clients multiple times. But if you can get like one big overview, and then the trainings are separate, guardianship and special needs trust, ABLE, it's really helpful for kids like freshman year, because I've done a lot of these trainings, and that was the best one. I'm just telling you. So I'll email you
Thank you so
and
much.
perhaps connect you with the director of my school. It really was. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Like step by step, you kind of covered everything. So thank you. And so I'll start the presentation, and it could get a little wordy. We have some parents on here. But in general, I think with when you talk about ABLE, people usually shut down. It's a financial program, so automatically people are overwhelmed and stressed. And so I think it's, the best way to kind of introduce it to your families is first literally just tell me if you need pamphlets in Spanish and English and Creole, and just have them look at it, have them go on the website. Then I can come. I've done trainings at CARD for the staff before with Jennifer, and because it can get icky, and it sounds like something like, you're being sold something. It's not. It's very important. I've been putting money in ABLE since my son was 6, and now I'm using it for Paulina for things like Natasha, for the cat, all these things that are really important, that I think, you can use it. You're earning money tax-free. So it really makes a lot of sense, for your child with autism. But if there's any questions, if it gets too wordy, let me know. Let me see. Am I sharing? Are you telling me to share a screen? Let's see. Do I need to request, Paulina?
Yeah, do it, and
Okay, hold on.
it
Let
will
me
go
edit this.
easier.
First, let me do it. Okay, so it's going to be, I think it's going to be this one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you see it. Okay. Okay, so most of you know about ABLE, but ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. It was an act passed in Congress called the ABLE Act in 2014, and it was founded by parents of children with disabilities. And the idea was for every state to create their own financial savings and investment program for persons with disabilities. They're all nonprofits. The Florida ABLE program is called ABLE United. So this is the program for Florida residents. Okay, so they just passed that. So again, it started in 2014. Like I mentioned, I found out about it in 2016, was kind of wary. My mom's a financial planner in Connecticut. She had never heard about it. Took us a minute to decide to open an account. And since then, I've been actually an ambassador in Miami-Dade, trying to let people know how important it is. You know, and it's really, we've earned a lot of interest on my son's account, where now I'm able to use that money for things that maybe aren't covered by insurance. Okay, and this is more about the ABLE Act. Again, when you're telling parents about it, please let me know if you need pamphlets sent to you. Ever since the ABLE Act, there's all kinds of other ABLE programs. The ABLE Trust is for providing people employment, but there's also ABLE financial programs that are not nonprofit and are not ABLE United that have unfortunately popped up when you Google search. So it's just important that everybody has the name ABLE United and they know they're in the trusted site. Okay, so how are you eligible? Currently, the age, so essentially the person has to be diagnosed with a qualifying disability before the age of 26. In 2026, January of 2026, so essentially one more year, they will increase the age to 46. Why is this important? A lot of mental health disabilities are now considered eligible disabilities. So a lot of people don't get diagnosed until later in their 20s, even in their 30s, and also could have become disabled in that time. So they're trying to increase this age consistently every year. So if someone comes to you and they didn't get diagnosed until after they were 26, let them know. The law will change and they'll be able to open an ABLE account. What are the requirements? Either a diagnosis. It's very easy to open the account. It's a self-certified diagnosis, so I don't have to upload the neurologist diagnosis or anything like that. Typically, if perhaps the family would get audited or something, then maybe you would have to provide it. But it's really just a diagnosis that you know your child or you already has. If you're already receiving SSI or SSDI, that's already certification enough. If you move out of state, do you have to close your account? No. You just have to be a Florida resident when you open the account, and then you can continue to keep the account here wherever you move. What are qualifying disabilities? Really, the range is very vast at this point. You can see there's developmental disorders, intellectual disabilities, psychiatric, nervous, congenital. There's a list on the website, and if there's a new disorder that's come up, you can contact ABLE United and see if that would meet the requirements. Ownership. So my son's 15. We opened it when he was 6, but the account is in his name. I am essentially the account administrator. And really, what does that mean? It means that this money is only to be used for him, for anything that he needs in his life. There was a couple questions in my last presentation about whether a family was renting an apartment and they were using some of the money from the ABLE account to go towards their rent. Yes, you could do that. I think it needs to be a little bit clarified what amount. It can't be the whole amount. The entire family is living in that apartment. But typically we recommend, you use these things for anything like you were talking about earlier, Natalie, like transportation or any kind of these programs when you become an adult. Right now, I'm doing a non-insurance covered sort of therapy for my son. He has a seizure disorder. And so there was like a brain cap, $800. Luckily, I had money in his ABLE account. I really wanted to try it to see if it could help his anxiety. So things like that, you could use it for. And we'll go into more of the qualifying expenses. Specifics on Medicaid. So essentially, I think one thing that you could, even if there's one thing that you tell the parents when giving them the pamphlet is, I'm sure, Natalie, you've probably had to tell your families, if you have more than $2,000 in your name in your checking account, you can lose your eligibility to things like Medicaid and other government benefits. ABLE accounts are ignored when considering these benefits. So what does that mean? It means you can have money in this ABLE account. The idea is to kind of uplift the person with disability, allow them to have a little bit more financial, freedom, if that's the right word. And there are limits to how much you can have if you're receiving SSI or SSDI. But in general, you will not lose Medicaid if you have an ABLE account. These are IRS accounts. The IRS is aware of them. Social Security is aware of them. And essentially, it's a way to save money, invest money. There's portfolios that we'll go over, and also earn money. So the interest that you earn, let's say if you chose a growth portfolio where there's stocks and bonds, all of that interest is tax-free. So for someone like me, I would be taxed on the interest earned. This is to kind of give another leg up to persons with disabilities. The specifics for SSI. So right now, the limit, and it could go up, but right now this year, you can have up to $100,000 in the account, and it's not considered a resource. That means that you can still get SSI, or you can still have maybe a small job and get SSI. And the idea is that if you were to reach that $100,000 threshold, and the owner of the account had monthly expenses, typically what we say to do is to try to have them automatically withdrawn maybe at the end of the month versus the top of the next month, depending on when they get their check, to kind of keep that money below 100,000. If it goes over 100,000, it's not a big deal, but what it will alert Social Security. They will pause the payments, and you'll have to wait until it goes under that $100,000 threshold in order to continue to receive. So we do sort of sometimes recommend, try to use the Social Security money for the expenses that you need. If there's money left over, sure, you can put it in the ABLE account, but you have to remember, if you're close to 100,000, that money will then put you over, which will then pause your Social Security. So we try to recommend using the SSI for your expenses first. Enrollment, it's very easy. Again, that's why telling families to just check it out is very easy. I would recommend telling them it's a nonprofit. First things out of your mouth, it was not a bank. We're not selling you anything. This is a nonprofit run by the state of Florida and the 529 college plan. So all they have to do is go to ableunited.com. They can sort of read about it. There's a call line, there's a chat line if they have any questions. They also have it in Spanish, you can see on the tab. And it just kind of, they're adding more and more informative and sort of basic descriptions so people aren't confused on why the accounts are important and kind of, how easy they are to sign up. What do you need? You just need an email address. So obviously we use my email address. My son doesn't have one. And then his date of birth, his Social Security number. And then what would happen is his diagnosis. And then it would be my banking information. So whenever I withdraw money, it goes into my bank. And then whatever I use to pay it for, that is for him only, I save that receipt and just put it in a folder. And that's essentially if you ever get audited. When you file your taxes, and my son's my dependent, there is a form that's sent to me for Able United that shows the amount of money that's in there and then the amount of money that was withdrawn. And if there's ever a question whether it was a qualified withdrawal. I have a folder full of receipts that show what I used it for. Contribute. So every year they are trying to increase the total amount that you can invest or deposit, sorry, into the account per year. Right now, I think when my son started, it was 13,000. So, and now it's 18,000. It can be multiple people putting money in that would add up to $18,000. You can roll over the funds from the 529 college savings plan. That's something I'm doing right now for my son. Something that I do want to mention, and this could be a little bit too detailed, but in case Natalie, you get this question, I'm directing this at you because you probably do. The bill that passed that allowed you to roll over the money from the 529 college plan is expiring at the end of next year. I just found this out too. John Finch let me know. Now, because of the government change and all that's going on, it's not top priority to be bundled up in another bill where someone gets something, if you want this, we get that, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know when it will renew. So right now I have never really touched my son's college plan, just figuring, oh, down the road, I'll transfer it over, because you can only do 18,000 a year. You've got to cash it out and then deposit it. But now I'm getting nervous. Like I need to do at least 2 years worth to get it in there. So it's just something to be on the radar. They're always working very hard to try to get that anything repassed so we don't lose any benefits that we've had. But currently right now, yes, you can roll it over. You can only roll over 18,000 a year. Can you contribute your leftover SSA funds? Of course, like that, you know, as mentioned, it gets a little tricky if you're putting your Social Security fund, your leftover money into the ABLE account. Sure, that's great. You can earn interest, but if you're reaching that cap of 100,000 because you're putting your leftover money in, then you're not going to receive Social Security anymore. So we do typically recommend trying to spend your Social Security money first. And then able to work is for people with disabilities that are working, and it's essentially it's almost like an IRA for people with disabilities. So you're able to put in more money than the 18,000, and I think it will depend on each person's situation, how much money they're making. But it's, you know, almost another way of adding more money to a quote unquote retirement fund. And then this is just an idea of a gifting page. So, you know, a lot of questions I have a very large Irish Catholic family. I have about 30 cousins. Everybody wants to buy my son gifts. He has severe pica, so everything was always eaten, taken apart. So, you know, at the end of the day, like, oh, if you really, really want to send him something, you know, you could contribute to his ABLE account. You know, it's kind of a great thing. And I know my parents do. One of my sisters contributes on his birthday. I contribute. And, you know, it's really a great way to kind of help build your child or adult with disabilities sort of financial future. And then these are investment savings options. I'm never allowed to recommend. Each person's situation is very different. You know, if I'm in a much lower income neighborhood, a lot of times they're very wary of, you know, the stock market or the bond market. And so we do have an FDIC savings fund, which we know is backed by the government. And so you wouldn't really earn a lot of interest, but that nothing would ever happen to that money. In my case, my son was only 6, and so we weren't intending or needing to use the money that we were putting in. So I did choose a growth portfolio, which you can see is mostly made up of over 50% stock funds, bonds, and international stock funds. So what did that mean? It meant that the earning, it kind of went up and down, but if I look in the long term, I did earn a very large amount of interest on this account, which again is tax-free. So it really, really is dependent on the family. If the child is turning 18 and they're just opening the account and they know that, you know, the grandmother wants to leave money to the child or young adult, with like a, 18,000, let's say, and they put it in and they want to make sure nothing happens to it because they're going to need to use that money, then we would suggest choosing something more conservative. Withdraw. So typically you can, there's two ways you can do it. Like yesterday I did it for 2 of his therapies that aren't covered, and it takes about 5 business days. So you just choose where you want to withdraw it from, let's say the growth portfolio or your savings account, and my checking account is already in there. And then it alerts me that like an hour or 2 later that the withdrawal is starting, and then it will be in my account between 5 business days. You can also get a prepaid bank card. I plan on doing this when my son Gunnar is a little older, and you can just, let's say, put $100 on the account, on the card. And then I can try to teach him about money, take him to the grocery store. Okay, you have $100 or whatever it is, $50, and try to sort of teach him about money. And I think that's a really great way. Also, if you have a child or adult that's a little bit more independent, but obviously you don't want to put everything you have in the account on the card, it could be a good way to budget and allow them to be independent spending their money. And you can also request checks online. And the third way, finally, is that if there are, rent payments or monthly payments that the person with disabilities the account holder has, you can have those automatically withdrawn as well. And then these are just examples, of qualified disability expenses, anything from health, and health can be, massage or horse therapy or music therapy. Education can be any kind of vocational program. Housing is pretty self-explanatory. Transportation, like you were talking about before, if even public transportation can cost something, or private or Uber, you can have maybe the card set up to the Uber account, and then that's how it's paid. And then it goes on legal fees. Right now I'm using, and I mentioned to Paulina, the attorney is guardianship, special needs trust, and will package. She's already sending families there. It's Aguila Law. They're amazing, very empathetic and very understanding. But I'm using the money from his ABLE account to do his special needs trust. And then he'll be 16 in December. So then the following year, right after he turns 17, we'll start on the guardianship package as well. Assistive technology, again, any kind of app for communicating. My son uses LAMP, so his device is $9,000. It's covered through Medicaid, but it is a very long process. And then what will happen when he's an adult? Will Medicaid waiver cover it? I don't know. Will I need a new one? So if we ever, get into that situation and Medicaid waiver isn't coming through, then I can use this money to purchase him a new device. And then funeral and burial as well. And then this is a new one. Oh, so okay, so it's a disclaimer that basically these are meant to be used broadly, these different topics on what you can use it for. It really can be used for any qualified living expense. The only ones that it would not be qualified for is alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, or drugs. So those are the 4 that they would not allow you to use the money for, or you would essentially have to pay taxes on it on the back end. Do you have to file taxes? So yeah, so it depends. So right now, my son's my dependent. Most likely he will be, when I file guardianship. And so we get, the IRS sends us a form. They, again, like I said, these are IRS monitored accounts. So they are very aware of what's in them and how much money you've withdrawn, how much money you've put in per year. And so it's really seamless. There's no confusion when you get your form. It's not like you have to go digging up and try to figure it out. It's very easy. You can also very easily log onto your account and see what's in there on the day you're filing your taxes. And again, there's no fee to open an account. Able United has a lot of promotions. So a lot of times when I go do an event, they'll say, okay, let them know we're doing a promotion for the next month. If they open an account and put $50 in, we're gonna match it and put $50 in. So if any of you ever have an event and you'd like me to come present, or someone from Able come present, and you let us know in advance, typically they'll make a promotion happen for that event. And again, the investment administration fees are very, very minor. If you want paper statements, it's $10 annually, and then the prepaid card is $250 a month. But there's no application fee, there's no account maintenance fee. And again, it's administered by the Florida Prepaid Program. And so this is the, again, ableunited.com. When you go on the website, it's pretty easy to read. Again, this is one of those things, kind of probably like a card, you realize you kind of just have to pound people over the head with it over and over. And by the third or fourth time, they're like, oh yeah, maybe this is a good idea, open the account. And again, they can put $25 in and never look at it again. But it really is a really beneficial program for people with disabilities. And that's why I run around telling everybody about it.
That's amazing, Phoebe. I have a quick question. I
Yeah.
just came up to thinking through the threshold. Have you ever heard of people having to return money to the Social Security because of exceeding the $100,000 in the account?
No, it would just stop your payments. It would pause your payments, and then it would wait until it went below the $100,000, and then it would continue. So if someone was getting $2,000 a month and you had $199,000, they're not going to send you $2,000 because that's going to put you $1,000 over. So, you just want to be aware of it. So, perhaps, and again, like I understand, like, dealing with different demographics, it's easy to say, oh, we'll just take that extra money out and put it in a special needs trust. Well, we all know those cost money. Yes, it would be ideal if everybody could have an S&T and an ABLE account, but a lot of people can't afford that. So the ABLE account is free, and it's a way to have like some sort of leg up and some sort of extra money so you can have a better quality of life. And if people are in a position to then be able to open up an S&T, you can always withdraw that money and put it into a special needs trust that's then protected.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Does
Oh,
anyone else have a question? You can make it now. Again, we are recording the session and we're going to share it among our partners in the community, along with the link to rate the presentations. And we thank you all, Natalie, Phoebe, for sharing with us, for staying with us, all the attendees, and the ones that are going to see you later, again, because of the conflict that I was notified earlier today. So if anyone has a question, please let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to be sharing the email later on after we close the meeting. And thank you again, ladies.
Thanks, Paulina. Good job. I'll do it every time for you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Good weekend.
Bye.
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 Bye.